Okay, if I put you on the spot right now, no prep time, just your gut instinct, and I ask you to name the single most valuable, most precious thing in the entire universe, what'd you say?
Hmm. I feel like the cynical answer is, diamonds or maybe gold, but the answer people want to give is usually something more abstract. World peace, freedom,
Or the big one?
or the big one, love.
Those are definitely the classics, but today we are diving into a source that gives a totally different answer. I mean, it's an answer that sounds, well, it sounds incredibly narcissistic at first.
It does, but, and this is a massive but, it's not for the reasons you'd think,
Right. The source argues that the most valuable thing in the universe is you.
which is a bold claim.
A very bold claim. But it's not because you're special or talented or the main character of reality. It claims you are the most valuable thing because, without you, true love has nowhere to land. You are the landing strip for the most powerful force in the cosmos.
It's a fascinating inversion of the whole idea. We're looking at a sermon that was delivered back in 1983 by Reverend Myung Moon. It's titled Myself Part 2, but it's often called The Origin and Destination of the Self in Love.
And before you tune out thinking this is just going to be some light, inspirational talk, I have to warn you, this text is dense. It's almost like an engineering manual for the human soul.
That's a good way to put it. It tries to map out the self, not just psychologically, but biologically and physically.
It really reads like a theory of everything. It connects the way your blood circulates to the way nations are run, to the way birds sing, all to prove this one point.
That love isn't just a feeling.
Not at all. The argument here is that love is a literal law of physics, just like gravity or, electromagnetism.
So that's our mission today. We're going to deconstruct this argument piece by piece. We need to figure out where this text thinks the self comes from, why it claims your anatomy is some kind of spiritual blueprint.
And why it argues that if you get love wrong, you don't just mess up your own life, you actually break the universe.
It's pretty high stakes.
Incredibly high stakes. So let's start at the beginning, or I guess at the center. The source spends a lot of time trying to orient us.
It really does. It asks this navigational question: where is the capital city of a human being? And to explain that, it starts with a political analogy.
Right. He points to the United States. He asks, where's the center? And it's Washington, D.C. Now, D.C. isn't the biggest city. It's not the industrial hub. So why is it the center?
Because of the flow of information. That's where the instructions go out from, where all the reports come back to. It's the command hub.
Cut off D.C. and the nation loses its direction.
Exactly. But then he immediately pivots to biology. If you look at the human body, we might say the brain is the center because of the nervous system, or the heart is the center because of the blood.
But the text makes a critical distinction here, doesn't it?
It does. It says you can't see them as competing headquarters. It points out this anatomical fact. Wherever you find a major blood vessel, you almost always find a nerve running right alongside it.
They're like the highway system of the body?
They're inseparable. So the argument is that the center isn't just the brain or just the heart, it's the harmony between them. If the instructions and the fuel aren't communicating, the organism dies.
So the center is defined by a relationship, not just a location.
Right. And that leads to the next question. If the brain and heart keep you alive, where did that life even start?
We have this modern idea that we're autonomous. I am me. I began when I was born.
I think most people sort of operate on that assumption, that I'm my own little island.
Well, this text argues that idea is just factually incorrect.
Wow.
It traces the timeline back. You came from your parents. They came from their
Here's
parents.
just all the way back.
All the way back. And it uses this really beautiful tree and leaf analogy to explain it.
Oh, this was the part that actually made me stop and just visualize it.
It's so effective. Imagine a single leaf on a massive oak tree. That leaf might feel unique, fluttering in the wind, but its entire identity depends on the branch, the trunk, and finally, the root.
So you can't talk about the leaf, the self, without acknowledging the root. And in this text, the root is God. The argument is you share the same essential elements. You're just the current expression of the root's energy.
This leads to a very specific way of framing God, though. It's not just God is love. It's more structural. He uses the terms subject and object.
This is pretty standard terminology in this philosophy. The subject is the initiator. The object is the responder. And the text argues that if humans have a brain and a heart,
The result?
then the cause God must have the subject version of those things, even if we can't see them.
Especially because we can't see them.
Right. The source makes this really counterintuitive point about reality here. It says, look at the physical world. If you travel in a straight line, you eventually hit a wall or you circle the globe.
Diminishing returns, you run out of space.
Exactly. But the text argues the invisible world, the world of mind, of essence, doesn't have those limits. The deeper you go into the invisible, the bigger it gets. It's arguing the invisible is actually more substantial than the solid world we're touching right now.
Because the physical world is just a shadow of that invisible reality.
Precisely. So we've established the self is a leaf on a divine tree. Now, the source introduces a hierarchy. It calls them the three great values.
Truth, life, and love.
Which I know, it sounds like a generic inspirational poster.
Live, laugh, love, right?
We usually see those three as equals, but this text strictly ranks them, and it starts by deconstructing truth in a way I'd never heard before. The breakdown of the Chinese character here is, well, it's brilliant.
I'm always a sucker for etymology. Break it down for us.
So the character for truth is made of two parts. The left side is the symbol for king, and the right side is the symbol for his village.
The king's village.
Or the king's hometown. The text interprets this to mean that truth is basically the king's address. It's a signpost, it's a map to reality, but it isn't the reality itself.
That is a crucial distinction. We often think knowing the facts is the end goal, but he's saying the facts are just the directions.
Exactly. Truth serves life. And life serves love. That's the hierarchy. You need the map truth to find the life, but the life exists for the purpose of love.
Which brings us to that classic chicken or the egg scenario. Which comes first?
And the source is very firm on this.
No ambiguity.
None. Love comes before life.
I mean, biologically that holds up.
It does. You exist because two people came together, ideally in love, and that union generated your life. The act of love is the precursor. Therefore, the text argues your life is resultant. You are made by love, so you are made for love.
And this is where we pivot to the section that I think is maybe the most provocative part of the whole text. The source takes this made-for-love idea and applies it aggressively to gender and biology.
It stops being abstract and gets very physical. It introduces the concept of natural law. The argument is that just like trees know how to grow, humans have an innate directionality.
And that directionality is complementary existence.
Right. The text posits that men and women are created as two halves of a whole. It argues a man, by definition, can't find his completion in the male world. He is structurally compelled to search for the female world, and vice versa.
There's a moment where the source gets surprisingly blunt about physical attraction, the so-called beauty argument.
I laughed at this part. It's blunt, but it makes the point. The source asks, why do women strive for beauty? Is it just for themselves? He says, no, beauty is a tool for connection. And then he says that if a man is the only object available,
even if he is the ugliest man in the world,
he becomes desirable because the drive for connection overrides pure aesthetics.
It's a very utilitarian view of romance, but it leads to this puzzle piece theory. And this is where the text makes a claim about ownership that just completely goes against modern individualism.
This is the core of the biological argument. The text says, look at your own body, specifically your sexual organs. It argues the design of the male organ makes zero sense if it's just for the man. It's convex. It's designed to fit into something concave.
So the conclusion is that the man's body actually belongs to the woman.
And the woman's body belongs to the man. It's asserting that we are holding each other's keys. You cannot unlock your own purpose. Only your counterpart can do that. It frames the division of the sexes as a deliberate design to force us out of selfishness.
We literally can't be whole on our own.
Precisely. If you're alone, you're only a half.
Okay, so we've got the biological hardware. Let's talk about the software. The text describes the physics of love, almost like electrical engineering.
It absolutely does. It uses the concept of circuits, plus and minus.
How does that work?
Well, in electricity, if you put a plus wire against another plus wire, they repel. Nothing happens. You need a plus and a minus to create a spark, to create a flow.
And he applies this to social dynamics. This is where he talks about how marriage changes your friendships.
Right. He says it's natural instinct. Once a man gets married, once he connects with his minus, he naturally distances himself from his male friends, the other pluses. The text argues this isn't being antisocial. It's an instinct to protect the closed circuit he's formed with his wife.
There's another analogy in here that I found really vivid. The finger analogy. It's all about sacrifice.
This one sticks with you. He sets up this scenario. Imagine a man loses a finger. In a vacuum, that's a tragedy, it's a deformity, but suppose he lost that finger to save the woman he loves.
The context changes everything.
Completely. The source argues that for the woman, looking at that missing finger doesn't cause disgust. It triggers ecstasy. It becomes a symbol of absolute devotion. The argument is that love has the power to override physical reality.
Now, we do have to address the other side of this physics model. Because the text establishes such a strict universal law of plus and minus, it has very specific and very strong things to say about anything that deviates from that.
And we need to report this clearly, just as it sits in the text. The source uses this physics framework to explicitly condemn homosexuality and lesbianism. It labels them a deviated course of love.
And the reasoning isn't just moralistic, it's tied back to this universal law idea we just discussed, right?
Yes. The argument is functional. It says that because those relationships can't biologically propagate, they cannot create new life, they are, in a sense, dead ends. The text compares them to a violation of cosmic geometry.
It uses some incredibly intense imagery to make this point. It doesn't mention World War II.
It does. It compares what it calls misguided love to the destructive power of bombs. The claim is that if you shift the center of love away from that reproductive complementary model, you aren't just making a personal choice.
You're dismantling the structure that holds society together.
Exactly. The text argues you're breaking the system. It even claims that humans can be worse than animals in this regard.
How so?
Because animals have guardrails. They mate by season, by instinct. Humans have the freedom to love at any time, which places us above the animal kingdom. But the text argues that misusing that freedom going against the design is a fall lower than the animals.
It's important to understand that in this worldview, biology is theology. There's no separation.
Right. To the author, this isn't about social policy. It's about mechanics.
Mhm.
If you try to run water through a gas line, the system fails. That's the perspective being presented here.
So if the couple is the basic unit, the text then expands this outward. We get to what's called the four-position foundation.
This is the structural goal. It's a triangle, God at the top, husband and wife at the base. But it's not a static triangle. It has to produce something.
The children.
The children are the fourth position. They represent the future. The text calls them an investment. And this all expands into this massive cosmic metaphor. The source basically says the universe is one giant organism and you're just a single cell in it.
I love the part about resonance. It makes the universe feel so alive.
It's very poetic. It says the universe runs on the frequency of love. When birds chirp, we just hear noise or mating calls, but the text says, no, they are harmonizing. They are singing in love.
And it depicts God not as some silent observer, but as a participant.
As a singer, it asks, do you think God can sing and dance? And it answers, yes. It imagines God booming out a song and the whole universe vibrating in response. The idea is that when a family is harmonious, they are tuning their radio to God's station.
It even gets into the nitty-gritty of how you treat your own body because of this.
Briefly, yeah. Since your body is the dwelling place of this divine circuit, you have to manage it. He says, don't just gobble up food like a pig. You eat with the awareness that you're fueling a divine vessel.
Let's look at the practical application before we wrap up. Section 6 of our dive deals with restoration. How does this philosophy handle it when things go wrong? Like, say, divorce.
It acknowledges that divorce is agonizing because you are tearing apart two things that were fused. It says universal law is like a magnet. It's always pulling you back toward the original standard. So fighting that pull is painful.
But what if someone remarries? There's a very specific rule mentioned.
This is fascinating. The text says if you remarry, you can't just have a good enough marriage. The second bond must be deeper, stronger, and purer than the first one was.
Why? What's the reason?
To restore the failure. The text uses this phrase that otherwise the children will accuse the parent. You essentially have to prove to the universe that you've learned the lesson and achieved a higher standard of love.
That is a heavy burden to carry into a new relationship.
It frames relationships as spiritual responsibilities, not just the pursuit of personal happiness.
And finally, the workplace. How does true love apply to your boss?
It argues against exploitation, obviously. An owner shouldn't use people just to buy a new car. However, there is a big caveat.
There's always a caveat.
If the owner is driving the employees hard because they're serving the nation or the world, if there's a mission bigger than just profit, then the text argues that sacrifice is justified.
And the employees are supposed to be okay with that.
The argument is that if the employees share that vision, They won't feel exploited. They'll feel like partners in a cause. They aren't suffering for the boss's wallet. They're suffering for the mission.
So let's bring all this back home. The source maps out this whole cycle of the self. It seems to have a clear beginning, middle, and end.
It's a whole trajectory. Step 1 is origin. You're born from the love of parents, which connects you to the root, to God.
Step 2 is process.
Right. You live for the sake of love, specifically finding that complementary puzzle piece, your spouse, and creating that circuit.
And step 3 is destination.
You return to the kingdom of heaven.
But he defines the kingdom of heaven very simply.
Very simply. It's not a city in the clouds. He defines it as the state of existence where you live entirely for love. It's a resonance. If you vibrate at that frequency, you are in the kingdom. It's an internal reality before it's an external place.
I want to leave our listeners with the visualization that the source ends with. It brings us right back to nature.
It's a lovely image to close on. The source says, the next time you hear birds singing, just stop. Don't hear it as background noise. Hear it as the result of thousands of years of breeding, thousands of years of life, singing specifically for you.
It's an invitation to stop being just an observer.
Exactly. It says nature is waiting for you to listen. You are the audience. You are the center that gives their song meaning. If you aren't there to hear it and appreciate it with love, the circuit is broken.
So here's the question we want you to chew on today. We started by asking what the most valuable thing in the world is. This text says it's you, because you are the vessel for love.
But that implies a pretty terrifying flip side.
It does. If the self is defined entirely by its connections to parents, to a spouse, to God, to the universe, what happens if you strip all of those away? If you remove the relationships, is there any you left?
Or do you just cease to exist?
Something to think about the next time you hear a bird singing. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.